The stable boy and the rumors. The village of Elden sat quietly at the edge of a dark and endless forest. Most days were peaceful, filled with the sounds of farmers calling to their oxen, children playing by the stream, and the hammering of the blacksmith's forge. But when the sun set and the shadows stretched long, whispers filled the air, whispers of things too ancient to belong to men. The forest was said to be their home, and in that forest, the wolves walked. Aric, the stable boy, heard those whispers more than most. He worked near the forest's edge, cleaning stalls, hauling hay, and tending to the horses of wealthier men. His life was simple and small, his hands always dirty, his clothes always rough. When villagers saw him, they nodded politely but looked past him, as if he were part of the dust and wood of the stable itself. To them, he was just a boy with straw in his hair and mud on his boots. Nothing more. But the wolves were different. Stories said they were as tall as horses, their eyes glowing like silver moons in the dark. Old men claimed they were older than the village itself, creatures from a forgotten time. No one who ventured too deep into the forest after sunset ever returned, and every howl that rose in the night made shutters slam and children pulled blankets over their heads. Aric, though, listened to the howls with something like wonder. He would pause in his work when the sound rolled through the valley, a haunting note that rattled the stables. The horses stamped nervously, their eyes rolling, but Aric always whispered to them softly, calming them down. Sometimes he thought the wolves' cries carried words, not just sounds, as if they were calling to someone, as if they were waiting. One evening, as the sun sank red behind the hills, Aric finished brushing the last of the horses. He was alone, the smell of hay and leather heavy in the air. Then came the sound, deeper and closer than ever before, a howl, long and low, that made the lantern flame flicker. The horses neighed and kicked their stalls, panic running through them like fire. Aric pressed a hand to one horse's neck, whispering, "Easy, easy now," though his own heart thumped like a drum. He stepped outside into the cool night air. The village was quiet, but the forest was alive with sound, howls layered upon howls, echoing through the trees, as if 100 voices were crying at once. The ground itself seemed to tremble, the silence of the villagers heavier than stone. People peeked from their windows, fear in their eyes. "Stay inside," someone hissed from a doorway. "The wolves walk tonight." Aric should have listened, but something stronger than fear pulled at him. He felt the call in his chest, pulling like a rope. Without thinking, he walked toward the forest, his boots crunching on the dirt path. Behind him, doors closed, shutters slammed, and voices whispered, "The boy is mad." But Aric did not stop. The trees rose before him like dark towers, their branches nodded against the sky. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. Shadows moved between the trunks. Too quick, too large to be dear. Aric's breath came fast, his heart pounding, but he walked on. Every step deeper made the howls grow louder, until they seemed to circle him. Then the world went silent, no crickets, no wind, only the sound of his own breathing. Aric froze, his hands trembling at his sides. From the shadows stepped a figure, low and powerful, its fur black as night, its eyes glowing silver. An enormous wolf stood before him, its head high, its presence filling the clearing. Aric's knees weakened, his chest tight with fear. He had no weapon, no strength, nothing, but the smell of hay and the dirt on his clothes. But the wolf did not attack, it only stared, unblinking, as if weighing something unseen. Then, another wolf appeared, and another, until the clearing was full, their eyes shining like stars. Aric's breath caught, his heart racing. He was surrounded, alone with the very creatures that had haunted his village for generations. And yet, deep inside, he felt something strange. Not fear, not entirely, but a pull, as if this moment was meant for him. The wolves' howls had called, and he had answered. The encounter with the ancient wolves. Aric stood frozen in the clearing, the weight of glowing eyes pressing down on him from every side. The wolves circled slowly, their massive paws silent on the forest floor, their breaths steaming in the cool night air. Each one was larger than any beast he had ever seen, their fur shimmering as though the moon itself had touched it. Their silver eyes burned with intelligence, too sharp, too knowing, to belong to simple animals. Aric's chest tightened, his hands shaking as he whispered to himself, "This is the end." But the wolves did not leap, they did not snarl, they only stood, watching him with an intensity that felt like fire. The largest of them stepped forward, a creature taller than Aric's shoulders, its fur black streaked with silver. Its gaze locked onto his, and for a moment the world shrank until there was nothing but boy and beast. Aric tried to look away, but something inside him refused. It was as if the wolf was not just staring at him, but into him. The boy's knees trembled, yet his feet did not move. He remembered the whispers, the old stories told by frightened men at the tavern. They had spoken of wolves that bowed to no one, not even kings. They had spoken of ancient guardians of the forest, born before human villages, older than any crown or throne. And now, here he was, a simple, stable boy, face to face with them. The great wolf lowered its head slowly, its massive body bent forward until its snout touched the ground. The glowing eyes never left Aric's behind it. The other wolves followed, one by one, their heads bowing in unison. The clearing glowed with the reflection of their silver eyes. All pointed toward the boy. Aric's breath caught, his mind spinning. Why would they bow to him? He was no warrior, no king, just a boy who shoveled hay and cleaned hooves. His heart pounded as he whispered, "I don't understand." But the wolves seemed to hear his words, their ears twitching, their heads still pressed low. From the trees behind, the sound of rustling came. The villagers, who had followed at a distance, now peeked into the clearing, their eyes widened, mouths hanging open in disbelief. They saw what no human had ever seen, the ancient wolves bowing before a boy of dirt and straw. Gasps and whispers broke the silence. The legends, they are true. The wolves have chosen him. Aric turned, his face pale in the moonlight. He saw their fear, their awe, their confusion. For the first time, the villagers who had always ignored him were looking at him as if he were someone greater, as if he mattered. But Aric felt no pride, only a strange warmth growing inside his chest, a power he could not name. The great wolf rose again, its silver eyes glowing brighter. It stepped closer, so near that Aric could feel its breath on his face. But instead of fear, calm washed over him. The wolf touched its nose lightly to his forehead. In that instant, Aric felt something awaken inside him, a pulse like a second heartbeat. Visions flickered in his mind, forests stretching forever, moons burning silver, and the pack running as one. He staggered, clutching his chest, overwhelmed by the images. But when he looked up again, the wolf was still there, steady and patient. The pack watched him silently, their heads tilted, as though waiting. Aric realized they were not just bowing, they were offering. They were offering him something ancient, something beyond human understanding. The villagers behind him dropped to their knees, unable to stand beneath the weight of the moment. Some wept, some prayed, others whispered his name in awe. Aric, they said, he is chosen. But Aric himself could hardly believe it. He had been nothing but a stable boy. And yet the most ancient of creatures had bowed their heads to him. The great wolf stepped back, letting out a low, powerful howl. The others joined in, their voices rising together in a sound that shook the trees and echoed across the valley. It was not just a howl, it was a proclamation, a call to the stars themselves. Aric stood in the middle of it, his heart racing, his hands clenched, his mind whispering the truth he could no longer deny. The wolves had chosen him. The chosen bond. The howls of the wolves echoed through the night, rolling across the valley like thunder. The villagers in the shadows trembled, some bowing their heads, some clutching their children tightly. Never in their lives had they seen such a thing, never in their legends had they believed it would happen before their eyes. Aric stood in the clearing, his chest rising and falling with every heavy breath. The great wolf stood before him, silver eyes glowing like twin moons. Aric felt the strange warmth inside him grow stronger. It pulsed like a living flame, spreading from his chest to his arms and legs. For a moment, he feared he would collapse, overwhelmed by the force pressing through his body. But then he realized the warmth was not hurting him, it was becoming part of him. The wolves were not only bowing, they were sharing their bond. He raised a trembling hand, reaching toward the great wolf's head. The beast leaned forward, lowering its massive form until his fingers touched its fur. It was warm, softer than he expected, glowing faintly under his touch. In that instant, the forest seemed to breathe with him. He could feel the heartbeat of the earth, the rush of wind, the silent watch of the stars. The villagers gasped as the entire pack lowered their heads again, as though honoring the moment. One old man whispered, "He is no longer a boy." Another said, "The wolves have crowned him." But Aric felt no crown on his head, no throne beneath his feet. He was still himself. Only now the forest and its guardians had chosen him. The great wolf stepped back, circling him slowly. The others followed, forming a ring around the boy, their glowing eyes watching in silence. Aric turned slowly, his heart racing, realizing he stood in the center of something ancient, something sacred. When the wolves howled again, the sound filled his chest as though it belonged to him too. He was not their prisoner, he was their kin. From the edge of the trees, the villagers crept closer. No one dared to speak loudly, no one dared to break the silence. They stared at Aric with wide eyes, no longer seeing a dirty boy who shoveled hay. Instead, they saw a figure glowing faintly in the moonlight, surrounded by the most feared beasts in their history, and the beasts bowed to him. Fear turned to awe, awe turned to reverence. Some villagers fell to their knees, whispering prayers they did not even understand. Others called his name softly, Aric, Aric, as though he had become something more than human. The boy shifted uncomfortably, unused to their eyes, unused to respect. He had been ignored all his life, and now the whole village stared at him as if he were chosen by the stars. The great wolf let out one final howl, a sound of command. The pack rose to their feet, their glowing eyes fixed on Aric. Then, one by one, they melted back into the forest shadows, disappearing between the trees. Only the largest remained, standing beside him like a guardian. It lowered its head once more before turning to follow the others. But before it vanished, it looked back at him, silver eyes burning with promise. Aric stood alone in the clearing, the echo of the howls still ringing in the night. The villagers slowly approached, their faces pale, their voices trembling. One of them whispered, "You are chosen." Another said, "The wolves belong to you now." But Aric shook his head, his voice quiet but firm. "No, I belong to them." The words settled in the air, heavy with truth. From that night on, Aric was no longer only a stable boy. The villagers no longer looked past him, no longer dismissed him as nothing. They looked at him with fear, with respect, with awe, because they had seen the impossible, the ancient wolves bowing to a boy of mud and straw. Yet, deep inside, Aric did not feel like a king. He felt like a bridge, standing between the world of men and the world of the ancient wolves. He knew his life would never again be simple. The bond had changed him, tied him to something greater. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one truth was clear. He had been a nobody, a forgotten stable boy, until the night the ancient wolves bowed their heads to him, and from that moment, nothing in the world would ever be the same.